In the vibrant city of Lagos, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and the streets pulsed with endless energy, there lived a man named Ayodele, known across Instagram and TikTok as Ayodele the Enchanter. He was the ultimate city heartthrob. With his chiseled jawline, gym-sculpted body, and a style that blended high fashion with effortless cool, Ayodele wasn't just admired, he was worshipped. His follower count was in the millions, and women from all walks of life slid into his DMs, hoping for a chance to meet him. Ayodele's lifestyle was the stuff of dreams. He lived in a penthouse apartment with panoramic views of the Lagos skyline. His garage was a showroom of luxury cars, a sleek black Lamborghini, a roaring red Ferrari, and a Rolls Royce that whispered wealth. Weekends were a whirlwind of rooftop parties, private yacht cruises, and exclusive VIP club appearances. His Instagram feed was a carefully curated showcase of champagne toasts in Dubai, horseback riding on the beaches of Zanzibar, and poolside lounging at the Maldives' most luxurious resorts. But Ayodele wasn't just about luxury, he was a master manipulator. To him, women were trophies to be collected and discarded. Single ladies, married women, career professionals, and university students, none were immune to his charm. He identified women who seemed desperate or emotionally vulnerable and used his good looks and calculated words to lure them in. Yet, once Ayodele got what he wanted, or if the women sought more commitment, he would disappear, leaving behind broken hearts and shattered dreams. Ayodele met Nancy, a beautiful and wealthy woman in her 30s, at a friend's party. Nancy, with her elegant demeanor and radiant smile, exuded sophistication. As an independent woman who had built her success from the ground up, Nancy wasn't easily swayed by charm. But Ayodele, ever the opportunist, saw her as a challenge. At the party, Ayodele approached Nancy with his signature confidence. "You're the most stunning woman in this room," he said smoothly. Nancy, flattered, engaged him in conversation. His charm, humor, and wit drew her in, and by the end of the evening, she was captivated. Ayodele wasted no time, sending her flowers the next day and inviting her to dinner at one of Lagos's most exclusive restaurants. Over the next few weeks, they shared romantic moments, candle-lit dinners, late-night drives along the coastline, and private weekend getaways. Ayodele made Nancy feel like the center of his universe. But as Nancy grew closer to him, she yearned for more. She wanted a real relationship, one with depth and commitment. When Nancy brought up the idea of commitment, Ayodele's demeanor shifted. He dismissed the conversation, claiming he wasn't ready to settle down. Days later, he broke things off with Nancy without a second thought. Heartbroken, Nancy realized she had been nothing more than a plaything to him. Ayodele's next target was Dorothy, a renowned fashion designer married to a businessman who frequently traveled for work. Dorothy was beautiful, successful, and recognized in her industry, but her husband's constant absence left her feeling lonely. To distract herself, she poured her energy into her designs, but the void in her heart remained. Ayodele met Dorothy at a fashion show where she was showcasing her latest collection. Striking up a conversation, he complimented her work, his words dripping with admiration. "Your designs are exquisite," he said, flashing his signature smile. "But I have to admit, they pale in comparison to you." Dorothy, flattered and longing for attention, found herself drawn to Ayodele. He pursued her relentlessly, sending her thoughtful gifts and inviting her on luxurious trips. Together, they traveled to exotic destinations, and Ayodele made her feel like the only woman in the world. For the first time in years, Dorothy felt alive. When Dorothy discovered she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She imagined a future with Ayodele and their child, even considering leaving her husband to build a life with him. But when she shared the news, Ayodele's reaction was far from what she expected. He became cold and distant, accusing her of trying to trap him. Days later, he ended things with her, leaving Dorothy devastated. Fearing humiliation, Dorothy reconciled with her husband, who returned from his travels. She spent time with him, ensuring that when the baby was born, it would be accepted as his. Ayodele's next victim was Jessie, a stunning young woman in her final year at university. Jessie was a brilliant, disciplined, first-class student who had little time for relationships. Her focus was on her academics, and she had dreams of a bright future. Ayodele visited Jessie's university as a guest philanthropist, attending an event to donate to educational causes. During the event, Jessie walked by, her poise and elegance catching Ayodele's attention. Intrigued, he made inquiries about her and discovered her academic achievements. Determined to win her over, Ayodele reached out to her through a carefully crafted romantic gesture. He sent her a handwritten letter praising her intellect and beauty, accompanied by a bouquet of roses. Flattered by his approach, Jessie agreed to meet him. Ayodele pulled out all the stops, whisking her away on extravagant dates and trips. He made her feel special, like the only girl in the world. But as their relationship deepened, Jessie began neglecting her studies. When she discovered she was pregnant, she excitedly told Ayodele, hoping they would build a future together. Ayodele's reaction was explosive. He accused her of ruining his life and abandoned her in Port Harcourt, where they had traveled for a getaway. Heartbroken and stranded, Jessie had to find her way back home alone. Ayodele's next target was Jael, a stunning and wealthy designer who had built her empire through hard work and determination. Jael was confident, self-assured, and had no time for love or relationships. She valued her independence above all else. One Friday night, after an exhausting week, Jael decided to unwind at a popular nightclub. She walked in, radiating elegance, her presence commanding attention. Ayodele, who was also at the club, immediately noticed her. Used to women falling at his feet, Ayodele was intrigued when Jael walked past his table without so much as a glance. Ayodele, determined to get her attention, ordered the most expensive drinks in the club and had them sent to her table, but Jael barely acknowledged the gesture. Frustrated, Ayodele enlisted the hype man to sing his praises, hoping to impress her. Yet Jael remained indifferent. When Jael decided to leave, Ayodele rushed to intercept her. "Hi," he said, flashing his most charming smile. "I couldn't let you leave without introducing myself." Jael looked him over, unimpressed. Reaching into her purse, she handed him her business card. "If you're interested in my services, you can contact my office," she said curtly before walking away. Ayodele's ego was bruised, but instead of giving up, he vowed to make her fall for him. The next day, Ayodele visited Jael's office unannounced, only to be turned away for not having an appointment. Furious and embarrassed, he called his manager and demanded they book a meeting for the following week. When the day arrived, Ayodele showed up looking dashing, wearing a tailored navy suit and his signature confident smile, fully convinced that his charm would win her over. But Jael remained unimpressed. She kept the conversation strictly professional, her tone polite but distant. Ayodele commissioned her to design the interiors of his properties in Banana Island, using the opportunity to secure more time with her. They scheduled an inspection date, and Ayodele prepared an elaborate rooftop dinner complete with soft jazz and candlelight to impress her. When the day came, Jael arrived, not alone, but with a team of designers, clipboard in hand, and laser-focused on the task at hand. She barely acknowledged the dinner setup as she walked past the table, giving instructions to her assistants. Frustrated, Ayodele realized his usual tactics wouldn't work on her. For the first time in his life, Ayodele felt powerless. The more Jael resisted, the more determined he became. His infatuation quickly grew into obsession. Ayodele began showing up at Jael's favorite spots, hoping to accidentally bump into her. He'd appear at the boutique she frequented, pretending to browse while sneakily watching her pick out fabrics. At a local art gallery, he commissioned a piece from her favorite artist and made sure the delivery arrived during one of their scheduled meetings. One evening, he rented out a private cinema and invited her to watch a documentary about Nigerian architecture, one of her passions. Jael accepted the invitation, but arrived with her assistant, treating the event as a work engagement. Ayodele gritted his teeth, but played along, all the while thinking of new ways to catch her attention. Determined to understand Jael's world, Ayodele attended one of her design workshops unannounced. The room was filled with aspiring designers, and Jael stood at the front, commanding the room with her poise and expertise. Ayodele, dressed casually to avoid standing out, sat quietly in the back, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions during the Q&A session. Jael noticed him but said nothing, choosing instead to treat him as just another participant. By the end of the workshop, Ayodele approached her, holding a piece of painting he did during the workshop training. This isn't great, he admitted with a sheepish grin, but I figured learning about your world would help me appreciate it more. Jael arched an eyebrow but couldn't hide a small smile. Points for effort, she said before walking away. Hoping to showcase his depth, Ayodele invited Jael to a charity gala he was hosting for underprivileged children. The evening was grand, with Lagos's elite in attendance, but Ayodele's focus was solely on Jael. He gave a heartfelt speech about his newfound desire to give back to the community, hoping to impress her. Jael, seated at a table near the stage, clapped politely, but remained distant. After the speech, Ayodele approached her, offering a dance. She hesitated, but eventually agreed. As they moved across the floor, Ayodele leaned in and whispered, "I'm not the man you think I am, Jael." She pulled back slightly, meeting his gaze. "No," she said, her voice cool. "Then prove it." Realizing the grand gestures weren't enough, Ayodele decided to take a different approach. Ayodele began volunteering at an orphanage Jael supported, spending weekends painting walls, organizing supplies, and playing with the children. On one such day, Jael arrived unexpectedly to check on the project. She found Ayodele sitting on the floor, surrounded by children as he helped them draw colorful murals. For a moment, she observed him silently, her expression unreadable. When Ayodele noticed her, he stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "I thought I'd help out," he said casually, though his heart pounded in his chest. Jael nodded. "Keep up the good work," she said before walking away. But as she left, Ayodele noticed the faintest smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Ayodele felt as though he was finally breaking through. The man who once thrived on superficial relationships now craved something deeper. A connection that wasn't built on charm alone. Jael's steady composure and the way she challenged him at every turn made him want to be better, not just for her, but for himself. One evening, after a long day inspecting properties, Jael accepted Ayodele's offer to grab dinner. Unlike his usual lavish setups, he took her to a quiet, hole-in-the-wall restaurant known for its authentic jollof rice. Over plates of steaming food, their conversation flowed effortlessly, and for the first time Jael saw a side of Ayodele that felt genuine. "I'm starting to think there's more to you than meets the eye," she said, her tone teasing. "Maybe you're finally giving me a chance?" Ayodele replied, his voice soft. Jael smirked. "Maybe." From that night on, their bond deepened, marked by a series of moments that blurred the lines between professional meetings and personal affection. Ayodele, once the flashy playboy, began to show a softer, more thoughtful side, while Jael, known for her guarded demeanor, allowed herself to embrace the warmth of companionship. One Saturday afternoon, Ayodele surprised Jael with a picnic at Freedom Park. Instead of hiring a team to set everything up, he prepared it himself, packing a basket filled with her favorite snacks, fresh fruit, and a bottle of chilled wine. They sat on a checkered blanket under the shade of a large tree, sharing laughter and stories about their childhoods. At one point, Ayodele attempted to sketch a quick portrait of Jael on a napkin, but his artistic skills were terrible. Jael laughed so hard she had tears in her eyes, playfully snatching the napkin and pretending to be offended. "You're lucky you're charming, or I'd never forgive this insult," she joked. Ayodele grinned, leaning closer. "You're lucky I'm terrible at art, or I'd spend all day drawing you instead of looking at you." One evening, after an impromptu dinner at Jael's apartment, Ayodele noticed her favorite playlist playing softly in the background. He extended a hand, bowing slightly. "May I have this dance?" Jael rolled her eyes, amused. "In my living room? Why not? I don't need a fancy ballroom to enjoy a moment with you," he said with a wink. Laughing, Jael accepted, and they danced barefoot on her hardwood floor. As they swayed to the soft rhythm of an old jazz classic, Jael rested her head on Ayodele's chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and warm. Knowing Jael's passion for Nigerian culture, Ayodele planned a weekend getaway to Badagry. They explored the historical slave routes, visited the old museums, and took a serene boat ride along the lagoon. During the trip, Ayodele held Jael's hand as they walked along the sandy shores, his usual playful banter giving way to genuine curiosity about the history she loved so much. Jael, in turn, was touched by his willingness to engage with something that meant so much to her. That night, they sat by a bonfire at their beachfront lodge, sharing stories about their dreams. Ayodele, for the first time, admitted his desire to create a legacy beyond his reputation. "I want to be remembered for something meaningful, not just my looks or wealth," he said. Jael smiled, squeezing his hand. "You're capable of so much more, Ayodele. I see it in you." Jael introduced Ayodele to her love for board games, hosting cozy game nights in her apartment. They played Scrabble, Monopoly, and Ludo, often turning the games into playful competitions. "You cheated," Jael accused, during a particularly heated game of Monopoly. Ayodele feigned innocence. I would never. You're just upset because I own half of Lagos now. Well, let's see how you like being in jail, she said, smirking as she sent his token to the Monopoly jail. They laughed until they were breathless, the evening ending with Jael leaning into Ayodele's arms as they watched a movie. Jael, eager to share her world with Ayodele, took him on tours of Lagos's architectural marvels. They visited the National Theatre and the striking modern designs of Banana Island homes. Ayodele, fascinated by her knowledge, listened attentively as she explained the significance of each structure. He even made a game of guessing which buildings were her designs, often guessing wrong just to see her laugh. During one tour, as they stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, Ayodele turned to Jael, his voice soft. You see the beauty in everything, Jael. That's what I love about you. Jael's cheeks flushed, and she looked away, smiling. You're not too bad yourself, Ayodele, for a playboy. Jael decided it was time Ayodele learned how to cook something other than instant noodles. One rainy evening, they stayed in and prepared egusi soup together. Ayodele, despite his confidence in other areas, was utterly clueless in the kitchen, burning onions and spilling ingredients. You're hopeless, Jael teased, laughing as she guided his hands. Hopelessly in love, Ayodele quipped, earning a playful shove. By the end of the night, they were covered in flour and spices, the kitchen a mess, but the egusi soup was perfect. They ate together, laughing at their mistakes and savoring the moment. These shared experiences solidified their bond, making it obvious to everyone around them that they were deeply in love. Ayodele, once the playboy who thrived on superficial connections, now found joy in the simple, authentic moments he shared with Jael. And Jael, who had always guarded her heart, began to let Ayodele in, one genuine moment at a time. With their bond deepening, Ayodele grew certain that Jael was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. Determined to make his proposal perfect, he began searching for the right engagement ring. He visited upscale boutiques across Lagos, seeking something as unique and dazzling as Jael herself. One sunny afternoon, he walked into an exclusive wedding boutique. As he admired a diamond solitaire ring, imagining Jael's reaction, he heard her voice, clear and unmistakable. Do you think this one suits me? Jael asked the boutique attendant, her tone light and cheerful. Ayodele's heart pounded with excitement at the serendipity of seeing her there. He turned, ready to call out her name, until the sight before him froze him in place. Jael was standing in front of a mirror, wearing a wedding dress. She twirled gracefully, her face glowing with happiness. Beside her stood a man who leaned in to kiss her forehead, before excusing himself to head toward the restroom. Ayodele's world crumbled in an instant. Seizing the opportunity, he approached Jael, his voice trembling. Jael. She turned, her smile fading slightly, but not apologetically. Ayodele, she said simply, her tone neutral. What is this? He asked, gesturing toward the dress. Why are you trying on a wedding dress? And who is he? Jael's eyes glinted coldly. He's my fiancé, Benjamin. And this? She gestured to the dress with a flourish. It's for our wedding next month. Ayodele blinked, the word fiancé echoing in his mind. Fiancé? Wedding? What about us? Us? Jael laughed softly, but there was no warmth in it. Ayodele, there was never an us. We were just fun. Fun? Ayodele's voice broke. I loved you, Jael. She smirked, stepping closer. Did you, though? Or was I just another trophy for Lagos's famous playboy? Her voice was sharp and cutting. You don't get to be the victim, Ayodele. Not after everything you've done to others. Ayodele stood there, stunned and speechless, as her words pierced through him like a dagger. Before he could respond, Benjamin returned, placing a protective hand on Jael's back. Her smile turned warm again as she looked up at Benjamin, a complete transformation from her cold demeanor moments earlier. Without another glance at Ayodele, she took Benjamin's hand, leaving Ayodele standing there in the boutique, shattered, defeated, and utterly alone. For days, Ayodele locked himself away, consumed by heartbreak. He finally understood the pain he had inflicted on countless others. Determined to change, he sought therapy and began apologizing to the women he had wronged. He dedicated himself to helping others, creating a foundation to support single mothers and abandoned women. Through this work, Ayodele found purpose. Months later, Ayodele met Esther, a kind volunteer at his foundation. Their relationship grew slowly, rooted in mutual respect and understanding. When Ayodele knelt before her with a modest ring, he whispered, "You taught me what it means to love selflessly. Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving it to you?" Esther smiled through her tears. Yes. And for the first time, Ayodele knew what it meant to truly love and be loved in return.